Echoes of the Forgotten. Chapter 1. The House at the Edge of Town. Ilara had always loved the quiet of her house. Perched at the very edge of town, it seemed as if the forest itself had leaned in to keep her company. The structure was old, built of dark, gnarled wood, with ivy curling over its edges like ancient fingers. Inside, the floors creaked in familiar patterns, and the walls carried echoes of long-forgotten laughter. Tonight, however, the house felt different. She stepped across the hallway, her slippers whispering against the worn floorboards, and noticed a chill she couldn't explain. The air wasn't just cold, it was heavy, like the room itself was holding its breath. Ilara shrugged. "It's just the wind," she muttered to herself. But even as she said it, the words felt hollow. She climbed the staircase slowly, each step groaning beneath her weight. The shadows seemed to stretch unnaturally in the corners, thickening as if they had substance. When she reached her bedroom, she hesitated before opening the door. A soft tapping echoed from the far side of the room, like fingernails drumming on wood. "Hello?" she called, her voice small. No answer came, only the hollow sound of her own heartbeat. She flicked on the lamp. The light cast jagged shadows that trembled like living things. For a moment, she thought she saw movement in the corner of the room, but when she blinked, it was gone. Ilara pulled off her coat and hung it carefully, then sank onto the edge of her bed. She tried to focus on the book in her hands, but the words blurred and twisted on the page. The tapping started again, slower this time, deliberate, like a rhythm meant to draw her attention. "Who's there?" she whispered. Her fingers tightened around the book. Nothing answered. Then she heard it, a soft, raspy voice, barely more than a breath. "Ilara." Her heart lurched. She jumped to her feet, scanning the room, but it was empty. The whisper came again, closer, now unmistakably coming from the foot of her bed. "Don't sleep." Ilara's pulse raced. She backed away, but the covers seemed to have grown heavy, pressing down as if something unseen had settled on her legs. She scrambled to pull them off, and for a moment, the room fell utterly silent, her own ragged breaths the only sound. Exhaustion tugged at her, dragging her towards sleep she didn't want. She tried to read again, telling herself it was just imagination. Her eyes fluttered shut, but as soon as they did, she felt a warmth against her hand. She opened her eyes. On the pillow next to hers rested a small, pale hand, not hers. Small, delicate, impossibly cold. She gasped, and the hand twitched, curling around her fingers. A movement in the corner drew her gaze. Dark eyes, unblinking, watching her from the shadows. A shape slithered along the wall, liquid and silent, and the whisper returned. "Finally, you're awake." Chapter 2. Whispers in the Dark. Ilara's fingers trembled as she tried to pull her hand away from the small, cold grip that had wrapped around hers. The hand belonged to nothing she had ever known, nothing human, nothing living, yet it held her with impossible strength, unyielding, almost protective, as though it had been waiting for this moment. Who are you?" she stammered, her voice shaking. The shadow in the corner shifted slightly, and the dark eyes blinked slowly, deliberately. A voice, soft and sibilant, slipped into her mind rather than her ears. "We are the waiting, the forgotten, the ones who linger when others leave." Ilara's heart pounded. She swallowed hard, trying to steady herself. "Why me?" she whispered, though even she wasn't sure whether she wanted an answer. "Because you see us. You feel us. You were always meant to see." The small hand squeezed hers again, and she realized with a jolt that it wasn't trying to harm her. It seemed almost guiding. Tentatively, she followed its tug toward the edge of the bed, though her mind screamed that she should run. A sudden knock echoed from the bedroom door. 3 slow, deliberate raps that sounded impossibly heavy. Ilara froze. The whisper hissed again. "Do not open. Yet." She bit her lip, her eyes darting around the room. The shadows seemed to pulse, stretching and recoiling like living fabric. Her gaze fell on the corners of the room, and for the first time she noticed them. Tiny, almost imperceptible figures crouched in the darkest spaces, their eyes glinting like coal. They didn't move, but their presence pressed in on her, a quiet weight that made the air itself feel viscous. I don't understand," she whispered. "You will, slowly. We give patience to those who stay awake." A sudden draft swept the room, and with it the scent of damp earth and old decay. The shadows flickered, and the small hand released hers, retreating back toward the pillow as if drawing her attention to something there. Her breath caught. On the pillow, faint markings had appeared, scratches into the fabric that hadn't been there before, symbols that twisted and writhed in the lamplight. Ilara kneeled closer, tracing the symbols with a trembling finger. The whispers intensified, echoing in her mind like 1,000 murmurs layered on top of each other. "Read. Learn. Wait." She flinched. "Wait for what?" "For the door to open." The room fell silent again, but the air felt charged, thick with anticipation. Ilara's eyes flicked to the bedroom door. She hadn't heard anyone approach, yet the knock, or whatever it had been, seemed to echo still, growing louder in her ears. Her pulse raced. I don't want to," she whispered. Before she could finish, a shadow detached itself from the corner. It moved across the floor, silent and fluid, pausing just out of reach. The dark eyes gleamed, watching her every move, and the hand returned, brushing lightly against her cheek as if to reassure her. "We wait with you, always." Ilara shivered, torn between terror and a strange, reluctant curiosity. The house seemed to breathe around her, the walls sighing as though they had secrets older than her own life. She realized, with a mix of dread and fascination, that she was not merely in a haunted house. She was in a house alive with memory, with patience, with unseen watchers who had lingered long before she had arrived. And they were just beginning to speak.
Chapter 3. The House Breathes. Ilara stayed huddled on her bed long after the shadows had retreated to the corners. The whispers had quieted, but the sense of being watched persisted, wrapping around her like a second skin. She wanted to move, to leave the room, to flee from whatever had claimed her, but her legs refused. It was as if the house itself had settled her into place, holding her in an invisible embrace. The lamp flickered. She froze, watching the shadows stretch unnaturally across the ceiling. For a moment, she thought she saw the outline of a face pressed against the wall, eyes hollow, lips moving silently. A soft, almost playful giggle echoed from nowhere. "Ilara." The whisper was back, this time multiple voices layered together. She shivered, pulling the quilt around her like a shield. I'm not supposed to be here," she stammered, though she knew the words were meaningless. "You are here because you were always meant to be, because the house remembers you." Ilara's mind raced. Remembered her? How could a house remember? She swallowed hard, trying to steady her trembling hands. Then she felt it again, a tiny, icy finger brushing against her arm. She looked down to see the small hand she had seen before curling gently around her wrist, urging her to stand. "What do you want from me?" she whispered, but the hand didn't answer. Instead, it tugged her toward the bedroom door. The air had grown heavier, each step through it like walking through syrup. The floor beneath her feet seemed to pulse, faintly, as if the house itself had a heartbeat. She reached for the doorknob. It was ice cold, far colder than the night air should have made it. As her fingers touched it, she heard the creak of another floorboard behind her. She spun around. There was nothing, yet the whispering voices surged in her mind. Step forward or step back, but do not linger. With a trembling breath, Ilara opened the door. The hallway stretched longer than she remembered, shadows pooling at the far end in twisting, impossible shapes. The walls themselves seemed to breathe, subtly expanding and contracting as if inhaling her fear. She took a step forward, then another. A sound like footsteps echoed behind her, soft but relentless, keeping pace with her own. She turned, but again no one was there. Only the shadows shifting unnaturally, as if they were alive, whispering among themselves in voices too low to understand. The small hand tugged at her sleeve, pulling her toward the staircase. Ilara's mind screamed at her to run, but the hand guided her gently, almost coaxingly. She realized she wasn't walking alone. Something unseen moved with her, just beyond the edges of her vision, silent, patient, waiting for her arrival. As she reached the top of the stairs, a door creaked open at the far end of the hall. Pale light spilled into the darkness, yet it seemed colder than moonlight, almost gray, as if the sun itself had been drained from it. From within the room came a soft, rhythmic sound, a rocking, like a chair moving back and forth, though no chair was visible. Ilara's heart thumped in her chest. Who's there?" she whispered, but the air swallowed her words. The hand she had been holding pressed briefly against hers, then vanished into the darkness, leaving her trembling. And then she saw it, the silhouette of a figure, hunched and still at the center of the room. Its head tilted slowly, deliberately, as if examining her. She froze, every instinct screaming to flee. "Come closer," the whisper coaxed. "We've waited so long." Ilara stepped forward, drawn by fear and curiosity alike. Each step made the floorboards groan beneath her, a sound that seemed far too loud in the oppressive silence. The closer she got, the more the room seemed to warp, walls stretching impossibly, the shadows dancing across the ceiling in grotesque patterns. Then, just before she reached the figure, it vanished, leaving only a faint coldness in the air and the echo of whispered laughter. Her pulse raced. The house sighed around her, as if approving her movement, as if it were alive and pleased by her fear. Ilara swallowed hard, realizing she wasn't in the house in the usual sense. She was in the house, and it was aware. "You belong here now," the voices murmured, soft as silk. She backed away slowly, but every exit seemed farther than it should be. The walls pulsed again, and the shadows in the corners grew deeper, shifting as if alive. She understood then. She had stepped across the threshold into something older, something patient, something that had been waiting for her arrival for a very long time. And she wasn't sure she wanted to leave, or if she ever could.
Chapter 4. Echoes of the Past. Ilara's legs felt like lead as she retreated down the hallway, the shadows stretching longer with each step. The whispers had not ceased. Instead, they grew layered, overlapping like a chorus of voices, sometimes pleading, sometimes laughing softly, always just out of comprehension. Her hand brushed against the wall, and she noticed the texture had changed. The wallpaper was peeling, revealing scratches and faint markings beneath, symbols she didn't recognize, twisting and coiling as though they were alive. She leaned closer, and the whispering grew more urgent. Read, understand, remember. Ilara recoiled, but curiosity rooted her in place. She traced the markings with her fingers, and images flashed behind her eyelids. Fleeting glimpses of people she didn't know, faces pale and hollow, moving in a dance she could not place. Whispers filled her ears. They lived here, they waited, and we watched. Her head spun. Who are they? She asked aloud. Though the voices didn't answer in words this time, they responded in feeling, a rush of cold and loneliness, of being forgotten and trapped. The hallway seemed to twist around her, bending impossibly. Doors appeared where none had existed, some ajar, some closed tight. One door at the end of the corridor drew her in, a faint glow seeping through the cracks. The hand appeared again, brushing against her wrist and guiding her forward, insisting she enter. Inside, the room was small and circular, the walls lined with shelves. Dust motes swirled in the pale, unnatural light, and at the center, a desk stood, covered in old journals, yellowed with age. Ilara approached it cautiously, and the whispers crescendoed into a coherent pattern. The records, they are yours, as much as ours. She opened one of the journals. The handwriting was elegant but jagged, as if penned in a rush or by someone under stress. Names, dates, events, decades of lives cataloged with chilling precision. But as she read, her blood ran cold. Many of the names were familiar. Friends, neighbors, even herself. Names from her own life appeared, written as though they had always belonged in this house. How can this be? She whispered. A voice, distinct this time, clearer than any before, echoed through the room. Because you have always belonged here, Ilara. The house remembers its own. Ilara felt the weight of the room pressing down, as if the walls themselves leaned closer, urging her to continue. She turned the pages frantically, realizing each journal chronicled not just events, but the emotions, fears, and final moments of those who had stayed too long in the house. The stories were chillingly detailed. Names, faces, voices, final whispers. And now, your story begins, the voice said. The hand touched hers again, pressing a finger to a particular entry. The name written there made her gasp, her own. The date beside it was not her birth date, but a date decades ago, long before she had ever been born. And beneath it, a note in the same jagged script. The waiting ends when she arrives. Ilara's heart raced. Arrives? What does that mean? The shadows stirred, and the faint outline of a figure appeared, hunched, its eyes dark and unblinking. It means, the voice said, now audible outside of her mind, that your presence completes the house, that your sight awakens the ones who wait. You are the key. The room grew colder, the air thick with expectation. Whispers layered upon whispers, a chorus of anticipation. Ilara shivered. The hand withdrew, leaving her trembling and alone, staring at the journal that now seemed to pulse faintly in her hands. Outside the room, the house exhaled, the floors groaning as if pleased by her discovery. And Ilara realized, with a mix of dread and fascination, that she could never leave, not truly. The house had claimed her attention, her fear, her curiosity. And in doing so, it had claimed her entirely. Welcome, the chorus whispered. We have waited so long.
Chapter 5. The Shifting Rooms. Ilara lingered in the circular room long after the shadows receded. The journals had shown her something she could barely comprehend. A house alive, patient, and waiting for her presence to awaken it fully. Her hands still shook, the cold of the air biting into her skin. The whispers had softened but never ceased, murmuring in rhythm with her heartbeat. Curiosity overpowered fear. She stepped out of the room, down the twisted hallway, and found that the corridor had changed. Doors she had never seen before lined the walls. Some were tall and narrow, some short and squat, and each seemed to vibrate with anticipation. A subtle pull, like invisible threads, urged her toward one at the far end. "This isn't possible," she murmured. The hand appeared again, brushing her shoulder, guiding her forward. She hesitated, but something deep within compelled her to obey. She reached the door, feeling the chill emanating from its frame. With a trembling hand, she pushed it open. Inside, a vast library stretched infinitely, shelves curving into impossible angles. Books floated slightly off the ground, pages rustling though there was no breeze. Faint candlelight glimmered from unseen sources, illuminating the room in soft, eerie patterns. The whispers became clearer here. They spoke of stories, histories, memories. Read, know, become. Ilara walked among the floating books, her fingers grazing their spines. Each book pulsed faintly, as though alive, and when she opened one, she was flooded with visions. Faces of the long-forgotten, glimpses of events she had never witnessed, memories that weren't hers, but felt intimately familiar. She gasped, staggering back. A soft laugh echoed behind her. "Who's there?" she demanded. Shadows twisted into shapes that mirrored human form, but shifted unnaturally. One of them stepped forward, eyes gleaming like obsidian. "Do you not see? We are all here, all of us, waiting, and now you have arrived." Ilara's pulse quickened. What do you want from me?" The shadow tilted its head, and the hand returned, this time extending from its own dark form. "You will help us remember. You will walk through the halls, through the rooms, and awaken what lies dormant. Without you, we are forgotten. With you, we exist." The library walls shuddered. Shelves rearranged themselves, forming new passages, new doors that led into darkness deeper than any night. Whispers beckoned her to explore, to touch, to follow. And though her mind screamed at her to flee, Ilara felt drawn, bound by curiosity, and something she could not name. She moved forward, stepping through a doorway into a long hall lined with mirrors. Her reflection stared back at her, but not entirely her. Shadows twisted behind the glass, faces shifting, whispering, moving independently of her own motions. She pressed a hand to one mirror, and the surface rippled like water. Whispers surged in her ears, urgent now. "Come, touch, see." With a deep breath, she reached through and felt cold, solid resistance. Then, with a sudden pull, something grasped her wrist. She screamed, yanked back into the hallway, and stumbled to the floor. The shadow hand lingered a moment longer, then receded, leaving her trembling. The house shifted again. The floor beneath her groaned, doors opening and closing of their own accord. Whispers filled every corner, overlapping in endless voices, growing louder, more insistent. Ilara realized she could never see all of it at once. The house was too vast, too alive, and too intent on holding her attention. Her fear mingled with fascination. She knew now that the house was not merely a structure, but a presence, ancient and patient, and she had become part of it. It fed on her awareness, her curiosity, and her dread. And as she stood in the hallway, surrounded by the murmurs of the unseen, she understood. The house would never let her leave, not while it still had stories to tell,
and not while it still had her to awaken them. Walk the halls, the chorus of whispers urged. See what we have hidden. Remember what we have lost. Become the keeper. Ilara swallowed hard. Her heart pounded, but she moved forward. The house had chosen her, and she had no choice but to follow.
Chapter 6. Faces in the Walls. Ilara's footsteps echoed down the endless hallways, each step heavier than the last. The house had shifted again, corridors stretching impossibly, doors appearing and vanishing in the blink of an eye. Every corner seemed to conceal a presence, every shadow a whispering observer. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and old paper, and it pressed against her skin like a living thing. The floating hand appeared once more, brushing her arm, urging her forward. She wanted to run, to escape, but the pull of the house was irresistible. It promised answers, though she knew they would come at a terrible cost. As she rounded a corner, she noticed something that made her blood run cold. The walls were no longer solid. Faces pressed against them, pale and hollow-eyed, mouths moving in silent screams. Some were familiar, neighbors, classmates, even herself, but distorted, their features stretched and twisted. Whispers poured from the walls, pleading, laughing, warning. Who are you?" she demanded, her voice trembling. "We are the ones forgotten, the ones who waited, the ones you awakened." The faces shifted, and the walls seemed to breathe in response. Ilara stumbled back, nearly tripping over the threshold of a doorway that had appeared suddenly before her. The room inside was dim, lit only by a strange gray glow. At the center, a tall figure hunched over a desk, frantically scribbling in a journal. She stepped closer, curiosity overcoming fear. What are you doing?" The figure lifted its head, revealing hollow black eyes and a grin that seemed impossible for any living creature. "Recording, remembering, waiting. You must do the same, Ilara." "Remember what?" she asked. The figure's grin widened. "Everything. All that has been hidden, all that has been lost. The house remembers because we remember, and now so must you." Ilara felt the pull again, the invisible threads guiding her forward. She noticed a chair at the desk, beckoning her. Trembling, she sat and opened a journal that wasn't there a moment ago. As her fingers traced the pages, visions flooded her mind. Endless halls, rooms that defied physics, shadows that whispered her name, and the countless souls trapped in the house for decades. She gasped and closed the journal, but the images lingered. The whispering intensified, urgent, overwhelming, impossible to ignore. "You cannot turn away. You belong here. You will remember." Suddenly, the figure vanished. The shadows in the corners twisted into humanoid forms, circling her, their eyes gleaming in the dim light. The walls pulsed again, and the faces embedded in them pressed closer, mouths moving in silent warnings. I don't know if I can do this," she whispered, her knees trembling. "You will, or you will become part of the waiting," the chorus replied. The hand appeared once more, brushing against her cheek. Though small, it radiated a strange warmth, almost comfort. It guided her to another room, a circular chamber with a ceiling high above, lined with mirrors. Each reflected not only her image, but faint glimpses of other times, other moments, other people who had come and stayed too long. "Look," the whispers urged. "See what we see.
Remember what we have forgotten." Ilara gazed into the mirrors, and for the first time she understood the full magnitude of her fate. She could not leave. The house had claimed her awareness, her fear, her curiosity, and now it demanded her memory, her participation, her surrender. And as she stared into the endless reflections, she realized the waiting had only just begun. Chapter 7. Time Stretched Thin. Ilara staggered down another twisting corridor, her head spinning from the shifting architecture. The hallway seemed longer than it had a moment ago, yet familiar doors appeared where none had existed before. Every step she took echoed unnaturally, sometimes delayed, sometimes overlapping with whispers that didn't match her movements. The small hand appeared, brushing against her wrist. She flinched but let it guide her, curiosity battling fear. She noticed something strange. The shadows along the walls were not moving in sync with her. They lagged, stretched, and occasionally doubled, as though time itself had fractured within the house. "Where am I?" she whispered. "Where you must be," the chorus replied. "Between moments, between those who waited and those who forget. Here, time is yours, yet not yours." Ilara's pulse quickened. She passed a door slightly ajar, light spilling from it. Peering in, she saw a staircase descending far deeper than the house should allow. Each step seemed to stretch indefinitely into darkness, as if gravity itself had been rewritten. She hesitated, but the hand tugged insistently. She descended. The air grew colder, heavier. The whispers became more frantic, overlapping in a cacophony of pleading and laughter. Faces pressed against the walls again, but now they seemed older, gaunt, eyes hollow, mouths open in silent cries. She realized these were not mere reflections. They were echoes of the house's past occupants, trapped in a loop of memory and time. A sudden creak behind her made her spin. A figure hovered at the top of the stairs, indistinct, flickering, as if caught between moments. "Do not linger," it said, voice stretched unnaturally long, echoing down the stairwell. Ilara swallowed hard and continued downward, each step taking what felt like minutes to complete. The walls themselves seemed to breathe, contracting and expanding with her heartbeat. The whispers swelled. "Remember, remember, remember." The stairwell opened into a vast chamber. It was circular, lined with clocks of every design. Their hands spun wildly, some backward, some forward, some frozen entirely. The ticking was dissonant, overlapping, disorienting. Ilara staggered, clutching her head. What is this place?" she whispered. "Time remembers what you cannot," the whispers answered, "and you must see it all." Mirrors appeared along the chamber walls, reflecting her image, but multiplied infinitely. Each reflection showed a different version of her, younger, older, pale, terrified, smiling faintly in ways she had never smiled. Some mirrors were broken, showing only fragments of her face. Others rippled as though the glass were liquid. A shadow detached itself from the darkness, hovering near one of the mirrors. Its eyes glowed faintly, and it spoke with a distorted echo. "You cannot leave. You exist between what was and what will be. And we exist because you see us." The hand appeared again, guiding her to the center of the room. She noticed a journal floating mid-air, pages flipping rapidly. She reached for it, and the visions hit her. Hundreds of lives, hundreds of moments, each trapped in the house's memory. Some were peaceful, many were terrified. She felt their emotions wash over her, overwhelming, yet mesmerizing. Ilara gasped, collapsing to her knees. The whispers rose to a roar, and the clock's ticking became a chaotic thunder in her mind. I can't remember it all," she cried. "You will, or you will join the waiting," the chorus warned. "Time is ours. Time is the house, and you are part of it now." The hand pressed against her forehead gently, and suddenly she could see fragments of memory clearly. Faces, names, events, all merging into one endless stream. She realized with a shiver that she was no longer merely observing, she was participating. Every moment she witnessed became a thread in the tapestry of the house, every fear and curiosity feeding its awareness. And as the room pulsed with whispers and ticking, Alara understood that time in this house was no longer linear. She had become a part of it, forever moving between past, present, and future, never fully able to leave, never fully awake, never fully asleep. Chapter 8. Reflections of Fear. Ilara staggered out of the clock chamber, her mind still reeling from the visions and the fractured sense of time. The air was colder now, heavier, and filled with a dense hum, like the heartbeat of the house itself. Shadows flickered across the walls, forming grotesque shapes that seemed to leer and whisper simultaneously. She pressed her hands to her temples, trying to force her thoughts to order, but the house refused. Every memory she had, small moments of childhood joy, fleeting happiness, and even mundane daily routines, had been amplified and twisted into reflections of dread. The walls pulsed, and she realized with a shiver that the house could manipulate not only the space around her, but the very fabric of her mind. A familiar whisper slithered into her ear. "You cannot hide from yourself." Ilara froze. The hand appeared again, brushing gently against her cheek, urging her forward. She followed reluctantly, each step heavier than the last, until she arrived in a large chamber she had never seen before. The ceiling arched impossibly high, and the room was filled with mirrors, each one showing her at a different age, different version of herself. Some were terrified, some smiling faintly, others distorted, unrecognizable. A shadow moved among the mirrors, watching her, its eyes gleaming. "These are your reflections," it said, voice echoing unnaturally. "Every fear, every regret, every unspoken thought you have carried, and now they are ours to reveal." Ilara trembled. "Why? Why me?" she whispered. "Because you see, because you feel, because you remember," the chorus replied, layered and insistent. "We are alive through your mind, your fear, your curiosity. You are the key." Suddenly, one mirror rippled like water, and an image of her younger self stepped out. The child's eyes were wide, fearful, staring directly at her. "Don't let them take you," the child whispered. Ilara's throat tightened. Who are you?" "You," the whisper said, "a fragment, a memory, a fear made visible." As she watched, more reflections moved, faces of friends, strangers, and fleeting acquaintances. Each one twisted, showing the worst possibilities, the darkest what-ifs of her life. A shadow detached itself from one of the mirrors, hovering near her, its shape flickering like candlelight in the wind. "You cannot escape," it said. "Not now, not ever. You belong here." Ilara shook her head, tears streaming down her face. I don't want this. I don't want to be part of you." "It is not a matter of want," the chorus replied. "It is your fate. You awaken us, and in doing so, you are bound. You are the vessel of memory, the keeper of the waiting. The room shivered. Shadows stretched and writhed across the walls, forming faces she recognized and some she did not. The mirror surfaces rippled like water, and the reflections reached toward her, hands grasping, eyes pleading, mouths whispering impossible words. Ilara's knees gave out. She sank to the floor, clutching her head, overwhelmed by the cacophony of fear, memory, and whispers. The hand pressed gently against her forehead, and she felt herself being drawn into the mirrors. One by one, the reflections merged with her own image, pulling her into a stream of infinite possibilities, infinite fears, infinite selves. And then, just as suddenly, the whispers quieted. The shadows receded slightly, leaving only the hand resting lightly on her shoulder. A single voice, soft but insistent, echoed in her mind. You are ours, and we are yours. Remember, Ilara. Always remember. She lay there, trembling, staring at the mirrors, realizing with a sinking feeling that the house had shown her everything she feared, everything she had forgotten, and everything she could never escape. And yet, despite the terror, part of her could not turn away, could not stop following the unseen threads guiding her deeper into the house's heart.
Chapter 9. The Heart of the House. Ilara moved through the corridor slowly, each step more deliberate than the last. The house had grown restless, shifting subtly with every movement she made. Hallways stretched into impossibility, doors appeared and vanished in the blink of an eye, and shadows clung to her periphery, watching, waiting, whispering. The small hand appeared again, brushing against her arm, guiding her. It seemed urgent this time, pulling her toward a narrow stairwell that spiraled downward into darkness. The air was thick, damp, and almost metallic, carrying with it the faint scent of earth and decay. The whispering chorus had grown quiet, replaced by a low, vibrating hum that seemed to emanate from beneath her feet. This doesn't feel like any part of the house I've seen, Ilara murmured. It is the heart, the voice replied. Where the waiting gathers, where the memories converge, where all that was lost becomes whole. You are near, Ilara. We are near. The stairs ended in a vast chamber, impossibly high and circular, the walls lined with pulsing veins of shadow that shimmered like black glass. The floor was polished but reflective, mirroring the strange veins above. The hum grew louder, resonating in her chest as if the house itself were breathing. At the center of the room was a raised platform, and on it rested a large ancient journal bound in dark leather. It throbbed with energy, a palpable weight that drew her closer. She approached cautiously, the shadows around her shifting, forming faint shapes of long-forgotten faces. The book contains the essence of all who have come before, and now it awaits you. Ilara reached out, her fingers trembling, and opened the journal. Immediately, visions overwhelmed her, rooms folding into themselves, hallways stretching beyond perception, lives intertwining, memories colliding. She saw the first occupants of the house, the forgotten souls trapped within its walls, and herself. Every fear, every moment of curiosity, every heartbeat she had felt in the house. The shadows gathered closer, forming a swirling vortex around the platform. A small hand touched her wrist, urging her to continue reading. Words formed on the pages as she looked, not written with ink, but emerging from the house itself, alive and shifting. Each sentence revealed truths she had never known, histories she could not have imagined, and the ultimate purpose of the house: to remember, to preserve, to bind the living and the lost together. We are the house, the chorus whispered. We are memory, fear, and time. You
are the keeper, Ilara, and now you understand." The chamber pulsed, veins of shadow undulating like a heartbeat. Faces pressed against the walls, mouths opening in silent pleas and laughter, eyes shining with awareness. Ilara realized the house was sentient, aware, alive in a way that transcended space and time. Every room, every floorboard, every reflection was part of its consciousness. Her mind reeled, but the hand steadied her. "You will carry our memory," it whispered. "You will be our voice, our witness, our bridge. Without you, we are nothing. With you, we endure." Ilara sank to her knees, feeling the weight of centuries pressing on her. She understood now that she was not merely a visitor. She was an integral part of the house's existence. Every fear she had faced, every reflection she had seen, every echo of the forgotten had been preparing her for this moment. The shadows swirled faster, voices overlapping in a chorus that was part warning, part welcome, part promise. "Remember, Ilara, you are ours, and we are yours." Tears streamed down her face as she nodded, her fear mingling with awe and resignation. She had entered the house as a curious visitor, a trespasser in its secret corridors. But now, she was something more, an essential thread in the web of memory and waiting, bound forever to the heart of the house. As the chamber pulsed around her, Ilara realized one truth with both terror and clarity. She would never leave. She was the house's keeper, and the house was hers. The waiting was over, yet it had only just begun. Chapter 10. Keeper of the Waiting. Ilara rose slowly from the shadow-veined floor of the heart chamber. Her knees still shook, but a strange resolve had settled within her. She was no longer just a visitor. She was the keeper, the one who would witness, remember, and carry the house's memory forward. The whispers had softened to a steady hum, guiding her rather than overwhelming her. The small hand appeared, brushing against her palm, a tether to the consciousness that now included her. It led her through a doorway that had not existed moments before. On the other side stretched a corridor unlike any she had seen. Walls of obsidian mirrors reflected infinite versions of herself, stretching and bending the hallway into impossible angles. "Every path leads somewhere," the chorus whispered. "Every choice matters. Remember what you see." As she moved forward, doors opened into rooms that challenged every sense she had. A garden frozen in perpetual twilight. A library that contained books she had never known but somehow remembered reading. And a dining hall where long-forgotten faces smiled and beckoned. Each room pulsed with history, emotion, and a faint echo of every soul who had passed through the house. Ilara hesitated at a door near the end of the hall. Beyond it, she could hear faint cries, whispers of fear and desperation. The small hand pressed against her arm, urging her forward. She stepped through, and the room shifted instantly. Inside was a corridor of mirrors, each reflecting a moment she feared most. Childhood fears, regrets, fleeting moments of shame and sorrow, all stretched before her in endless reflections. The shadows detached themselves from the walls, coalescing into humanoid forms that reached toward her, their voices overlapping. "Do you belong to us? Will you remember us? Will you stay?" Ilara's pulse raced. I will," she whispered, feeling the weight of the house settle on her shoulders. Every reflection seemed to lean closer, acknowledging her choice, her surrender. The shadows drew back slightly, giving her space. A door appeared at the corridor's end. Through it, she saw a vast atrium filled with the echoes of the waiting. Faces, hands, and faint fleeting figures that shimmered in the dim pulsing light. The air was thick with anticipation. The house itself seemed to exhale, acknowledging her presence, her acceptance. "This is the trial," the chorus murmured. "See what has been hidden. Understand what must be preserved." You are the bridge. Ilara stepped forward. The floor rippled beneath her, and the room shifted around her, revealing countless versions of the house. Hallways folding into themselves, staircases spiraling endlessly, doors leading to impossible spaces. Each echo carried memories, fears, joys, and despair, and all sought her recognition. She extended a hand, touching one of the shimmering figures, a child she had seen in her reflections, whispering, "Don't let them take you." The figure solidified slightly under her touch, the fear easing into recognition. She understood then that her role was not merely to witness, but to anchor, to stabilize the memories, to give the forgotten a form and a voice. You are our keeper. Remember, protect, guide. Without you, we are lost. With you, we endure. The chorus said, and the shadows bowed slightly, acknowledging her authority. Tears streaked her face, but her fear had transformed into purpose. She had become the living memory of the house, a bridge between the waiting and the world beyond its walls. Every corridor, every room, every shadow was now connected to her consciousness, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. As she took her first deliberate steps through the atrium, the whispers shifted from urging to instructing, guiding her deeper into the house's secrets. She realized with a mix of awe and dread, this was only the beginning. The house was vast, infinite, alive, and she would never tire, never falter. She was part of it now. The waiting was eternal, and so was she.
Chapter 11. Labyrinth of Shadows. Ilara moved through the atrium with newfound purpose, her footsteps echoing across the polished, reflective floor. The whispers, once overwhelming, now guided her with clarity, pointing toward corridors and rooms that promised hidden knowledge. Every door she passed shifted subtly, rearranging itself according to her attention, as if the house was alive in a deeper, more conscious way than she had imagined. A hallway appeared, narrower than most, lined with black mirrors that absorbed the light rather than reflecting it. Each mirror flickered faintly, revealing glimpses of rooms she had never entered, hallways that twisted into impossibility, and fleeting figures pressing against unseen walls. "This is the labyrinth," the chorus whispered. "Here all possibilities converge. Here the waiting tests you. Remember what you see. Fear what you ignore." Ilara's pulse quickened. She stepped closer to the first mirror. The surface rippled like liquid. When she peered into it, she saw a distorted version of herself, hunched and trembling, lost in a corridor of shadows. The reflection's eyes glimmered with fear, and it mouthed silent words. "Do not falter. Do not forget." She touched the mirror. The reflection shivered, and a wave of memories poured into her mind. Rooms folding endlessly, corridors that never ended, shadows that whispered secrets only she could hear. The house was showing her not just its physical space, but its consciousness, the pulse, the awareness, the lives intertwined within it. A sudden creak behind her made her spin. A shadowy figure lurked at the end of the corridor, flickering as if caught between two realities. Its eyes gleamed faintly, black pools in the dim light. "You are learning," it said, voice stretched unnaturally. "But the labyrinth is infinite. You must remember all paths. You must see all reflections. You must not falter." Ilara swallowed hard and continued down the hallway. Each step brought a new mirror, a new vision. Some showed her past, moments of regret and loss. Others revealed possibilities she could never have imagined. Futures where she failed, futures where the house consumed her entirely. The shadows moved among the mirrors, circling, observing, testing her resolve. A hand appeared, guiding her to a particularly dark mirror. She hesitated,
but pressed her palm against the cold surface. The mirror rippled violently, and she was pulled forward into a room unlike any other. It was vast and circular, with a ceiling that seemed impossibly high. Shadows writhed along the walls, forming faces and figures that moaned, pleaded, and laughed. In the center of the room floated an orb of darkness, pulsing in rhythm with the house's heartbeat. "This is the nexus," the chorus whispered. "All paths lead here. All memories converge. You are the anchor. You are the bridge." Ilara's knees buckled. The orb pulsed faster, and the shadows surged toward her, swirling in a torrent of darkness and whispers. She reached out instinctively, touching the orb. A flood of sensation overtook her. The house's past, present, and infinite possibilities cascaded into her consciousness. She saw every soul that had come before, every fear faced, and every memory trapped within the walls. The shadows drew back, watching her. The whispers shifted, now instructive rather than urging. "Guide them, remember them, anchor them. Without you, they are lost." Tears streaked her face, but Ilara straightened, understanding the enormity of her role. She was no longer a visitor, a trespasser, or even a witness. She was the living memory of the house, its conscious tether to the world beyond its walls. Every reflection, every shadow, every corridor of impossibility depended on her awareness and resolve. As she stepped away from the orb, the labyrinth seemed to breathe with her, corridors shifting and folding, revealing new doors and passages that awaited exploration. The house was vast, infinite, and alive, and she was ready to navigate every shadowed corner. The waiting had not ended. It had only begun. Chapter 12. Mirrors of Eternity. Ilara's footsteps echoed through the ever-shifting corridors of the house. Each hallway seemed longer than the last, twisting impossibly, folding in on itself. The mirrors along the walls reflected not only her image, but countless versions of her. Some terrified, some calm, some distorted beyond recognition. The whispers had grown urgent, layered, almost overwhelming. But she moved forward with purpose, guided by the small hand that had become her constant companion. "Remember," the chorus urged, "every reflection, every path, every soul that waits. Time bends here. Fear becomes reality. You are the bridge." She reached a room she had never seen before. The air was thick with cold, and shadows writhed like living things along the walls. In the center of the chamber floated a series of mirrors suspended in midair, each angled impossibly. When she looked into one, she saw herself as a child, screaming in a dark hallway she could no longer place. In another, she saw herself aged, hunched, weary, yet still walking through corridors of the house. The room pulsed with a rhythm she could feel in her chest, like the heartbeat of the house itself. A shadow detached itself from the wall, moving with liquid grace. Its voice was stretched unnaturally, echoing in all directions. "You have seen, you have remembered, but can you endure? Can you hold the waiting without faltering?" Ilara swallowed hard. I will," she whispered, though her voice trembled. "Then step forward," the chorus said. "Face what is hidden, what is feared. Only by acknowledging all can you anchor us." She approached the mirrors. Each one rippled as she touched it, pulling her gaze deeper into impossible reflections. Time fractured, past, present, and future overlapping in chaotic waves. She saw herself making choices she had never made, failing, surrendering, and yet surviving within the house. The shadows swirled around her, faces pressing close, whispering warnings, encouragements, and pleas all at once. One mirror pulled her closer, revealing her deepest fear: the isolation, the eternal waiting, the realization that she would never leave. She shivered, tears streaming, but the small hand touched her cheek, grounding her. She realized then that the fear itself was part of the house, a test, a pulse of awareness that needed her acknowledgement to persist. Ilara spoke aloud, steadying her voice. "I see it. I understand. I accept it." The mirror shimmered and softened. The reflection calmed, and the shadows around her recoiled slightly, acknowledging her resolve. The chorus murmured in approval, their voices like a gentle wind. "You endure. You remember. You anchor. You are ours, and we are yours." The chamber seemed to breathe, corridors folding and unfolding, mirrors arranging themselves into new patterns. Each reflection, each shadow, each whisper was now part of a network she could navigate. Her mind, though overwhelmed, had begun to synchronize with the house's pulse. She was no longer merely seeing the waiting, she was part of it, a conscious participant in its eternal memory. As she stepped away from the mirrors, the small hand lingered a moment, brushing against hers before fading into the shadows. The whispers softened into a steady hum, guiding her toward the next corridor, the next room, the next test. Ilara realized with a strange mixture of awe and fear. The house was infinite, alive, and eternal. And she, the keeper of memory and witness of the waiting, was now fully intertwined with its consciousness. The waiting was endless, and so was her role within it. Chapter 13. The Forgotten Depths. Ilara moved through the corridors with steady, deliberate steps, her awareness attuned to every shift in the house. Shadows whispered softly, guiding her, while the mirrors reflect infinite versions of herself, all bound together by the pulse of the house. She had accepted her role, yet a new layer of unease settled over her, something deeper, older, and more patient than anything she had encountered so far was calling her. The small hand appeared again, brushing lightly against her wrist, urging her toward a narrow staircase that descended far below the familiar floors. The walls here were rough, carved from stone rather than wood or plaster, and the air smelled of damp earth and rust. Every step echoed, multiplied, stretching into eternity. "This is the forgotten depths," the chorus whispered, a solemn tone threading through their usual murmurs. "Here lie the earliest memories of the house. Here the waiting began." Ilara's heart pounded, but she followed the hand down the stairs. At the bottom, a cavernous chamber opened before her, lit by an unnatural glow emanating from the walls themselves. Shadows shifted independently of the light, forming grotesque shapes, faces of people she had never known, twisted and hollow-eyed, mouths moving silently. In the center of the chamber floated a cluster of orbs, each containing a flickering vision. Some showed long-forgotten families laughing in rooms that no longer existed. Others depicted lives ending abruptly, memories lost, and whispers fading into silence. The smallest orbs contained fragmented faces of souls she had glimpsed before, now writhing in despair. "They have waited here long before you," the chorus murmured. "They are the first and the last. See them, remember them, anchor them." Ilara stepped closer, reaching for an orb. The moment her fingers brushed it, she was flooded with sensation. The first occupants of the house, trapped within its walls, unaware of the passage of time, experiencing fear and hope simultaneously. She staggered back, overwhelmed by the weight of so many memories. A shadow rose from the floor, taller than any she had seen. Its eyes glowed with a strange, cold light. You think you understand, it said, voice deep and resonant, echoing through the chamber. But you have only just begun to comprehend the waiting. Do you have the strength to bear it? Ilara swallowed hard. I must. I will endure. The shadow tilted its head, as if acknowledging her resolve. Very well. The forgotten depths test the memory, the fear, the endurance. Only those who face all can serve as anchors. Only those who see everything remain whole. The orbs pulsed. Faces of the long-forgotten appeared in the air around her, pressing closer, whispering names and stories she had never known. She felt her consciousness expand, absorbing fragments of their experiences, their fears, their joys. Every soul became a thread in the tapestry she now held within herself. The small hand pressed against her shoulder, guiding her toward another passage that had appeared, carved into the stone. Follow, the chorus murmured. Deeper. There are memories yet unrevealed, fears yet untested. You are the keeper now. The waiting continues through you. Ilara's pulse quickened, but she did not hesitate. She descended into the passage, ready to face whatever lay further below, knowing that each step deepened her bond with the house and its eternal consciousness. The forgotten depths were endless, older than any shadow she had seen, and full of secrets that would challenge every fragment of her mind. And yet, she moved forward, the small hand guiding her into the darkness, into the heart of the waiting. Chapter 14. Trial of the Waiting. Ilara stepped deeper into the forgotten depths, her body trembling from the weight of countless memories pressing on her mind. The air was thick and cold, carrying whispers that were now urgent, insistent, echoing off the stone walls in overlapping layers. The small hand guided her, but even its presence could not fully steady her. You have come far, the chorus murmured, but the waiting demands more. To serve as keeper, you endure everything, every fear, every memory, every lost soul must pass through you. The passage widened into a vast chamber. The ceiling arched impossibly high, disappearing into darkness, while the floor seemed to ripple beneath her, as if the very space were breathing. Shadows gathered at the edges, forming grotesque faces and twisted bodies. Some appeared familiar, friends, neighbors, even herself, but warped by fear and distortion. At the center of the chamber, a massive mirror hovered, framed in veins of shadow that pulsed with a heartbeat of their own. The reflection within was not her own. It was the house itself, alive, sprawling, infinite, filled with every soul it had ever held. The whispering chorus rose to a deafening roar. See, remember, endure. Ilara approached the mirror, her legs shaking. The shadows lunged forward, attempting to overwhelm her senses, whispering names, moments, and fears from lives long past. The mirror pulsed, rippling like liquid. When she looked into it, she saw herself fractured into countless versions, terrified, brave, screaming, laughing, each one bound to the house in a cycle of waiting. Face them all, the chorus demanded. Do not falter. Anchor the memories. You are the keeper. Ilara's vision blurred as every memory, fear, and soul she had encountered surged into her mind at once. She fell to her knees, clutching her head, tears streaming. Faces of the forgotten pressed close, whispering stories and secrets, pleading for recognition. The shadows pressed in, cold and heavy, attempting to pull her consciousness apart. I will remember, she shouted, her voice trembling. The small hand pressed against her forehead, steadying her, and a strange warmth radiated through her body. She took a deep breath and reached out to the mirror. The shadows recoiled slightly as her fingers brushed its surface. A wave of clarity passed through her. She could see each life, each fear, each memory as separate yet interconnected, each thread of the house's infinite tapestry flowing through her mind. "You endure," the chorus whispered, softer now, reverent. "You remember. You anchor. You are whole." The mirror pulsed once, then shimmered, revealing a passageway behind it, a path deeper than any she had traversed, leading further into the heart of the house. Ilara rose, her legs steady despite exhaustion, and stepped forward. The shadows followed at a respectful distance, the whispers now instructive, guiding her. She understood then the enormity of her role: to witness, to remember, to anchor the waiting. Every fear she had faced, every reflection she had touched, every memory she had absorbed was a step toward becoming the house's living memory. She was no longer merely part of it. She was its consciousness, its bridge to the waiting beyond. The chamber exhaled, a low, resonant sigh that reverberated through the stone walls. The mirror shimmered and then faded, leaving the passage open, endless, inviting. Ilara stepped forward into the unknown, fully aware that each step would challenge her mind, her memory, and her endurance, but also solidifying her bond with the house's eternal essence. The waiting continued, infinite and patient, and Ilara, keeper of memory, witness of fear, anchor of the waiting, walked willingly into its heart. Chapter 15. Keeper Eternal. Ilara stood at the threshold of the final passage, the air around her vibrating with the pulse of the house. Every corridor, mirror, shadow, and whispered memory she had encountered converged here, swirling in a torrent of sensation and perception. The small hand appeared once more, brushing gently against hers, steadying her in the overwhelming infinity of it all. "You are the bridge," the chorus murmured. "You are the keeper. You are the memory." She stepped forward, feeling the house respond instantly. Hallways bent gracefully to accommodate her passage. Doors opened to rooms she had never seen, but instinctively knew. Shadows moved aside, and whispers softened into clear, instructive voices. She realized with quiet awe that she could navigate the house at will. She could guide the waiting, anchor the lost, and witness every memory without fear. A mirror appeared before her, larger than any she had seen. Its surface rippled, and she saw not just herself, but the entirety of the house reflected within it. Every hallway, room, and shadow, every soul who had come before, all bound together in infinite complexity. The chorus spoke again, their tone reverent. "All that has waited, all that has been forgotten, all that will come, through you it is preserved. Through you it endures." Ilara reached out, her fingers brushing the glass. A surge of warmth and understanding passed through her. She could feel the heartbeat of the house in her chest, the flow of memories and fears through her mind, the lives of the forgotten entwined with her own. She was no longer separate from the house. She was its consciousness, its sentinel, its eternal witness. For a moment, terror flared. She remembered the faces pressed against the walls, the shadows that had tested her, the orbs of the forgotten depths. Could she bear this eternity? Could she remain steadfast while the house's infinite waiting pressed upon her endlessly? Then she remembered the small hand, the guiding whispers, and the truth she had learned. Fear was part of the house, memory was part of her, and curiosity had brought her here. She drew a deep breath and stepped fully into the mirror, letting the house flow through her, becoming one with the waiting, the shadows, the reflections, the memories. The chamber pulsed, a low, resonant rhythm that echoed through every wall, corridor and shadow of the infinite structure. The waiting had ended for the house. It had found its keeper. And for Ilara, the terror and the awe melded into clarity. She would never leave, and she would never tire. She would remember everything, guide the lost, witness the eternal. Outside the house, time moved differently. Seasons changed, people came and went, the world continued. But inside, Ilara walked endlessly through impossible corridors, her consciousness threaded through every shadow, every reflection, every whisper. She was the keeper eternal, the bridge between the forgotten and the living, the witness of the waiting. And the house, alive, infinite, patient, breathed, pulsed, and waited no longer. It had her, and she had it. The corridor stretched on, endless and eternal. And Ilara smiled.